Now, General Michael Langley is in Kenya for the African Chief of Defense Conference, and I know this person is very familiar to you guys. He's best known for his outrageous remarks towards Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré, where he accused him of using the gold reserves in his country to benefit himself. And this is a statement that did not augur well with majority of you. I mean, guys, many people took to the streets and they were protesting and they were demonstrating and they were saying, hands off Burkina Faso, hands off Ibrahim Traoré.
Tensions are boiling across Africa, and Michael Langley just poured gasoline on the fire. The U.S. AFRICOM Commander touched down in Kenya, but instead of diplomacy, he was met with outrage and protests. Many see this visit as a desperate move to regain control over a continent choosing self-determination over foreign dominance. Meanwhile, Traoré, the man standing tall for African unity, continues to inspire millions.
Where he accused him of using the gold reserves in his country to benefit himself. And this is a statement that did not augur well with majority of you. I mean, guys, many people took to the streets and they were protesting and they were demonstrating and they were saying, hands off Burkina Faso, hands off Ibrahim Traoré. And obviously this is not what Michael Langley might have expected, and he made a clarification yesterday. I'll be walking you through what he said. He's standing by his word. He's saying some of these things were taken out of context, but still people are telling him, get off African matters.
So why is Langley targeting him? And is his trip to Kenya part of a bigger plan to undermine Africa's rising independence? The people are watching, and they're not buying the smiles. Langley's arrival. Kenya wasn't buying the show. When Michael Langley touched down in Nairobi, he expected red carpets and diplomatic pleasantries. Instead, he walked into a storm. Kenya didn't welcome him with honor. They met him with protests, skepticism, and raw anger. The streets buzzed with chants and signs making one thing clear: Langley wasn't welcome. And who can blame them? Langley's resume reads less like diplomacy and more like a playbook for modern imperialism. The people aren't naive. They see through the hollow handshakes, the security photo ops, and the polished press conferences. When a top U.S. military general suddenly appears, talking about cooperation and stability, it raises alarms, not hope.
Are on African soil, not for the first time, but this would be a good moment to ask about one of the countries that has taken its own autonomy, and that's Burkina Faso. Your remarks recently at the Senate seem to suggest that he's diverting, General Traore, is diverting its 4 billion gold reserves to sustain his military rule rather than for public welfare. These remarks sparked widespread condemnation across the continent. What did you mean by that statement?
Let me speak to Burkina Faso's sovereignty. They maintain their sovereignty. They make their decisions how they use their resources. They make their decisions who their resources go to for military support. That's their sovereign right.
To many Kenyans, Langley's visit felt more like a hostile corporate takeover than a diplomatic mission. His presence symbolized exactly what Africa's rising youth-led movements are rejecting: foreign interference, exploitative partnerships, and aid packages with strings attached. Worse still, Langley didn't flinch. He moved through media appearances with a smile, acting as though the continent still operates under old rules, that Africa remains a chessboard for outside players. But Kenya's response is a wake-up call. This isn't the Africa of the 80s or 90s. The narrative has shifted. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré are reshaping the script, confronting exploitation, and inspiring the continent to reclaim its voice. Langley may have come expecting quiet compliance. What he found was a continent ready to clap back, and a people no longer willing to play along. Traoré's momentum exposes Langley's flaws.
Dear participants of the first summit, of the heads of state of S, hello. It is a great pleasure and an honor to meet here today, a blessed date here in Niamey. Before anything else, let us give thanks to God who made this day possible. We thank Him for everything He has done for us up to today. and everything he will do for the people of AES, allow me also to pay tribute to the Nigerian people. These people who have suffered so much since the advent of the CNSP, and who continue to stand tall.
Here's the thing about Ibrahim Traoré. He doesn't play politics to please the West. While Langley relies on polished suits, closed-door deals, and shady allegiances, Traoré speaks the people's language. He's raw, fearless, and most importantly, honest. In Burkina Faso, he's become a living symbol of sovereignty, unapologetically kicking out French troops and demanding African solutions for African problems. That's why Langley sees him as a threat, not because Traoré has tanks or missiles, but because he's winning the ideological war. Young Africans resonate with Traoré's vision. They're tired of watching their governments sell out their futures for a photo op with American generals. They want dignity, ownership, and freedom from the neocolonial puppet strings. And Langley? He just doesn't get it. Instead of learning, he doubles down, making visits like this to Kenya, hoping to counter the rising influence of leaders like Traoré. But every time he opens his mouth and throws around words like stability and security, people hear control and coercion. Langley is stuck in a Cold War mindset, believing influence can be bought and loyalty can be manipulated. But Traoré's success in mobilizing real change proves otherwise. Influence in today's Africa isn't handed out by Washington anymore. It's earned on the ground through truth, courage, and action. Africa is tired of empty promises.
Ranking Member Reid, distinguished committee members, it's an honor to appear here today representing the outstanding service members, civilians, and families of United States Africa Command. As I get closer to the end of my tenure of command, I remain in awe of the character and capabilities of the men and women willing to serve our nation.
Langley's visit wasn't just offensive, it was tone-deaf. For decades, African nations have been promised development, infrastructure, and peace by people just like him. And what did they get? Corrupt regimes propped up by foreign money, militarized police, and a continent divided by invisible foreign hands. Langley showing up in Kenya, all smiles and buzzwords, only poured salt into that wound. The outrage he received wasn't just about him, it was about everything he represents. The puppet masters behind puppet governments, the quiet colonizers with louder wallets. Africa is sick of it. While Langley gives speeches about fighting terrorism and maintaining order, he never acknowledges the root of that chaos: foreign meddling. He talks about democracy, but his actions undermine real sovereignty. It's no wonder the Kenyan public saw right through his PR act. And while Langley tried to brush it off, it's clear his time-tested tactics are falling flat. Leaders like Traoré understand that real progress doesn't come from aligning with global superpowers. It comes from standing firm and protecting national interests. Traoré isn't out here making deals with the devil for short-term praise. He's building a legacy of independence. Meanwhile, Langley can't even land in Africa without triggering mass protests. That tells you everything you need to know. The security excuse is getting old.
Why do you think the threat of terror remains persistent, and what is the end game? What does that look like?
Well, part of it is Al-Shabaab, long-standing terrorist organization, sponsored by Al-Qaeda. They want to be able to use their operations, their information operations, become that shadow governance, illicit activities, nefarious activities, preying upon the people across Somalia, the marginalized clans.
Let's talk about Langley's favorite word, security. Every time he's pressed on the true purpose of U.S. military presence in Africa, he leans on that magic phrase. But whose security is he really talking about? It's certainly not the security of the African people. If anything, it's about protecting American interests, military outposts, access to critical minerals, and political leverage. For years, the U.S. has been training local militaries, yet violence and instability continue to spread. Coincidence? Not likely. Langley's real mission is about control. Keep Africa dependent and keep its leaders cautious, compliant, and afraid to challenge the status quo. That's exactly why Ibrahim Traoré makes Washington nervous. He doesn't bow, He doesn't play diplomat. He refuses aid laced with strings and resists letting foreign powers write his country's future. Traoré sees through the game, and he's rejecting it outright. Meanwhile, Langley sticks to his script, offering stability in exchange for silence. But stability without freedom is just another form of oppression, and Africans are waking up to that truth. The youth know it, the people in the streets know it, and increasingly, African leaders are embracing a new, self-determined path. Langley's definition of security is obsolete. It doesn't bring peace. It reinforces power imbalances. The old playbook is crumbling. What's rising in its place is a new Africa, bold, vocal, and no longer willing to be occupied under the guise of protection. Traoré builds while Langley breaks. What separates Traoré from Langley isn't just ideology, it's vision. Langley operates like a ghost of a fading empire, flying from capital to capital, whispering in the ears of presidents and prime ministers. His version of support comes in the form of air bases, weapons deals, and backing fragile regimes that toe the Western line. His legacy is one of division, broken promises, and dependence. Traoré, on the other hand, is in the trenches. He's not just talking about a new Africa, he's building it. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso is reclaiming its economy, transforming its education system, and reorienting its military to serve the people. He calls out foreign exploitation without fear, naming names and refusing to bow. His message, Africa can stand on its own, and it's resonating. His speeches aren't polished, they're raw, direct, and viral. He speaks to the youth not as pawns, but as partners. He tells them they don't need to sell out to succeed, and they believe him. Even in Kenya, often seen as a Western ally, Langley's message fell flat. Patronizing and outdated, he seemed out of step with the continent's pulse. Today, Africa is at a crossroads, and its people are choosing builders over breakers. Traoré is laying the foundation for something homegrown, something powerful. It's not just a movement, it's a fire catching across the continent. Kenyan youth lead the rebellion.
Anti-government protests continue across Kenya for the fourth week running. The youth-led protests are organized largely on social media. They were initially sparked by a controversial tax bill. President William Ruto has since withdrawn the bill and fired nearly his entire cabinet. But the protesters are demanding more, including an end to corruption and for Ruto to step down.
One of the most powerful moments during Langley's visit wasn't in the official meetings, it was on the streets. The youth came out in force, with fire in their eyes and clarity in their chants. They didn't just protest Langley's presence, they protested the system he represents. These weren't just angry teenagers looking for a fight. These were educated, politically aware young Africans who've had enough. Enough of foreign troops disguised as allies. Enough of resource deals made in smoke-filled rooms. Enough of the double standards. And what's amazing, they referenced Traoré. His name was on banners. His quotes were repeated in chants. For them, he's not just a president in Burkina Faso. He's a symbol of what's possible. This new generation isn't looking to the West for solutions. They're looking inward. They're rising, organizing, and demanding a different kind of leadership. And Langley's visit just poured gasoline on that fire. If he thought he could pacify or intimidate, he was dead wrong. Kenya's youth sent a message loud and clear. We're not your pawns. Traoré's influence is inspiring a continental shift, and the youth are its engine. Langley underestimated them, but they won't be underestimated again. A sellout in uniform.
Just weeks ago, the world watched as U.S. AFRICOM Commander General Michael Langley made a bold accusation, claiming that President Ibrahim Traoré was using Burkina Faso's gold to protect himself. At the same time, traitors, fugitives who plotted to destabilize Traoré's government, fled across the border. Their destination, Ivory Coast. And now, those two forces have aligned. General Langley recently met with the president of Ivory Coast, and out of that meeting came one chilling decision: the plan to establish a U.S. military base near Burkina Faso and Mali.
Let's call it what it is. Langley is a sellout, not to his country, but to the ideals of genuine cooperation and mutual respect. He may wear the uniform of the U.S. Marine Corps, but he moves more like a global lobbyist. His recent trip to Kenya wasn't about dialogue, it was about domination. He didn't come to listen, he came to impose, to pitch deals, to manipulate outcomes, and the people saw right through it. Langley's priority isn't Africa's progress, it's keeping the continent tethered to America's strategic interests. He talks about partnerships, but what he really demands is obedience. That's why he bristles at leaders like Ibrahim Traoré, leaders who don't bow, don't bend, and certainly don't sell out. Traoré defends sovereignty, he resists foreign pressure, he speaks uncomfortable truths. Langley could learn from that kind of conviction, but he chooses arrogance instead. His approach suggests he still sees Africa as a project to be managed, not a partner to be respected. That's not leadership. That's modern colonialism dressed up in military language. Langley had an opportunity to build trust, to show humility, and to engage honestly. Instead, he burned bridges and insulted a continent ready to define its own future. If that's not the mark of a sellout, what is? Africa's future doesn't include Langley. The most ironic part of Langley's visit? It proved exactly why leaders like Traoré are so necessary. Africa's future doesn't need more generals in suits. It needs bold, unapologetic leaders who prioritize their people over foreign approval. Traoré represents that future. Langley represents the past. And as Kenya's reaction showed, people are done being polite about it. The fake diplomacy, the shady defense pacts, the economic strings tied to every handshake. Africans are waking up, and they're organizing. Traoré isn't just winning hearts, he's changing minds. He's shifting the narrative from one of dependence to one of strength. That's what scares Washington. That's what enrages Langley. Because once that mindset spreads, the old games stop working. Langley tried to suppress that movement with charm and intimidation, and it blew up in his face. The streets of Nairobi weren't fooled. They stood with Traoré without him even being there. That's power, that's influence, and it's unstoppable. Langley can keep flying in and out of African capitals, but his playbook is dead. The future belongs to leaders who serve their people, not foreign agendas. Africa's writing a new story, and Langley, he's just a footnote. As chants for sovereignty echo from Ouagadougou to Nairobi, it's clear, Michael Langley is no peacemaker. He's a symbol of control. His visit to Kenya isn't about partnership, but pressure. Meanwhile, Traoré's unapologetic defiance has made him a beacon for African youth demanding change. If Langley came expecting applause, he found resistance instead. And if the US thinks Africa will roll over again, they're in for a rude awakening. This isn't just about one visit, it's about the future of a continent. Stand with truth, stand with Traoré. Africa is rising, and it won't be silenced.